Hey everybody, welcome back. This week we're going to talk a little bit about psychosocial theory. If you remember from the first unit, our theorist that is mostly associated with psychosocial theory is Erik Erikson. Erik Erikson actually studied underneath Anna Freud, who was Sigmund Freud's daughter. And I find it really interesting, the more that I learn about Erikson, the more that I realize how much of an influence Freud had on Erikson and his theory. I've been reading The Life Cycle completed by Erik Erikson and his wife Joan Erikson. And it's really interesting because he cites Freud a ton, Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud. And so I just never realized that because I've discounted Freud so much for some of his extreme views that we no longer believe in. So I thought that was really interesting. One thing that students really struggle with when we're learning about psychosocial theory is distinguishing it from another theory called social learning theory. Students get confused because the social piece that's in both of those, and so they get them confused. So that's just something that you're going to need to memorize, the differences between the psychosocial theory and social learning theory. So if we remember, social learning theory is when we learn certain behaviors by watching other people. Psychosocial theory, on the other hand, is a stage theory, and basically throughout life we have different stages that we go through. In each stage that we have, we get a challenge, right? Challenge accepted. And in these challenges, there's a positive way to resolve the stage and there's a negative way to resolve the stage. And the way that you resolve one of the lower stage or the first stages will influence your subsequent stages and how you resolve those issues. So our first stage that we're going to learn about is called trust versus mistrust. This happens from birth up to 1, and this is where a person or an infant, because we're in infancy here, learns to trust or mistrust the world. So if you think about some of the different videos that I had you watch for this unit, a lot of things that are going on right now deal with attachment. For example, if you look at Harlow's monkey studies, they were examining what actually goes into making an attachment. Is it just because a mother breastfeeds a baby, or is it because they're comforting, and when they get scared they feel comforted by their mother or primary caregiver? You know, if we think back, Harlow was done during a different zeitgeist, like there's a different time that had a different culture associated with it. And so back in those stages, they were typically primarily concerned with the mothers. And that's kind of evolved as we've moved through time together. So in this first stage, if you think about it, there's not a lot that babies can do. I mean, when babies are born, they can't even lift their head up on their own. They completely depend on other people for feedings, right? So we remember from one of our previous units that breastfed babies need to be fed every 2 to 3 hours around the clock. So that means that if you have a caregiver that's being attentive to those babies' needs, they're literally going to have to sacrifice their sleep so that they can wake up, feed that baby, put the baby back to bed, and continuing to do that so that the baby can be nourished, so that their brain can grow, and so that their growth is not stunted. And that's a big commitment. That's a big commitment for new parents, especially with different stressors that go along with having a newborn. And I guess, you know, it's the same for formula-fed babies as well. You know, they're only fed every like 3 to 4 hours, but it's still a big commitment. And some of these parents may not have really good support systems, so that's a huge deal. But these things show the baby that the parent cares. Like, for example, if a baby's sad, a lot of times parents will hold the baby, and that sends a message that, hey, I am here to protect you. I love you. This world's a good place, and I'm going to be here for you. Or like when parents change babies' diapers, let me tell you, that's really fun, right? But when parents change a baby's diaper, that shows the baby again that they care, that they're there, that someone's going to help take care of them. And it's really interesting because we'll see some of these types of attachment styles blend over into friendships later on. Romantic partners will actually come back and look at attachment theory in adulthood with relation to people's romantic partners, and that becomes really interesting. So our second psychosocial stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So this starts about age 1. And if you remember from those CDC developmental milestone handouts that I had you download last week, around age 1 is when children start to walk, right? Or toddle, because they're at the toddle age. And so there's actually kind of a range of ages that is normal for people to start walking. It's anywhere from 8 months on the young end all the way up to about 18 months. If a kid hits 18 months and they're not walking, then there might be some sort of developmental thing going on that needs some further evaluation. So if we think about this, we're thinking about what's going on with brain development. Kids now have some more mobility. They can go and explore, and they can start going and doing things on their own. Whether or not the parents or caregivers like that, that's a different story. But in this stage, kids, they learn, okay, can I be my own person? Can I go do this? Or am I going to learn to have shame and doubt about my abilities? So that's the second stage. It's autonomy versus shame and doubt. And so if you have a parent that allows their kid to explore and they help guide them, they don't let them get in danger or anything, but they allow them to do things on their own, or they allow them to kind of go and be curious, then the person's probably going to resolve this stage on the side of autonomy, which is the positive aspect. However, if you have a parent that never lets the toddler explore, or they are constantly telling their toddler that they're doing something wrong, then that toddler's going to start doubting their own abilities as well. And so a lot of this will deal with parenting practices. So when we start looking at parenting styles later, it'll be really important to examine it and see how a parenting style, or, for caregivers, so they can have parenting styles too, how that influences other areas of development. And I am really looking forward to that. And let me know if you have any questions.